And so we're going to go through 4 topics and then the brainstorms. We're going to talk about what is feasibility. We're going to talk about industry knowledge and how that impacts your decisions and your change opportunities. Market assessment, knowing the customer. Risk assessment, topic 4, risk assessment for distribution, technology, finance, and people. And you could take a whole class on each and every one of these topics, right? This is meant to be a flyover and then an immediate application in the little breakouts that we're going to have today. So with that, we will continue. All right. So topic 1, and please interject if you have questions. It's, I have a lot of screens open, so I'm not sure I can completely monitor the chat while I'm presenting and, looking at the who's on the screen as well. So speak up if you have a question. So topic 1, what is feasibility? It's really about defining the opportunity, really. And it's the core of business planning. It's the foundation of business planning. It's the process of identifying your idea and turning it into a business concept. And, just identifying and turning into the concept in of itself is a journey, right? There's so many steps that go from identifying to turning it into. But one of the foundations of it is the basis of industry knowledge. So starting in an industry that you have knowledge of, it's, when I first started my entrepreneur studies, I said, I've been doing this environmental work as an environmental engineer for all these years. I'm tired of it. I want to try something else. And I was told, no, you don't know another industry. Go back and find an opportunity in your industry because they are there. And I am a firm believer now that when you get deep into your industry, you can identify things that somebody doing a flyover on your industry isn't able to identify. Rachel, I think Rachel was the one who said, I have a background as a realtor and I want to find opportunities in real estate. I think that's fantastic. That's an industry, it's something you can dig in deep and really come up with a nuance, an original niche idea that no one else is going to come up with. So I think that's fantastic. And, so basically millions of ideas are formed daily by people. I think every single person on this call probably has a couple ideas a day. Wouldn't it be great if, right? And why are there all these ideas but no execution on it? I really believe that execution is what differentiates the entrepreneur, not the generation of ideas. So, harnessing that space between the idea and turning it into execution is what sets true entrepreneurs apart. And it's really tempting. It's really easy to go, I got an idea, now I'm going to start business planning. If you skip that step of feasibility in between idea generation and business planning, I think you're shortchanging the process a little bit. You learn so much more in that feasibility step. The customer interviews, the market assessment, all that stuff happens in feasibility. So I really discourage people from taking that exciting idea and immediately jumping it right into business planning. And, I think you're shortchanging yourself. Any questions on any of this before I flip to the next topic? No? Okay. I see a lot of head nodding, so I think you're on. I see a lot of turned off screens too, so I don't really know. The screens I see head nodding. Okay, that's somebody coughing, right? Not a question? Okay. So topic 2, industry knowledge. So what do you do with that industry knowledge? Industries are in flux. Industries have areas of chaos. Every single one. I can't imagine there being an industry, even look at the music industry when it shifts from, vinyl to digital. There's so many opportunities that are created in every industry, lots of flux, lots of chaos. When you are comparing the industry past with the industry of its future, that's where those opportunities are identified. And there's changes can be micro, changes can be macro, but really there's going to be some trends that are creating a change in your industry. And when that change is created, that's where the opportunity is created. And so just to give a few examples, to really kind of get your minds, your juices flowing on where things come. Some of these changes, businesses can be shut down or become obsolete. Or they can lose their customers, or new ones could spring out of nowhere. Whereas one is failing and suffering, another one's thriving. And it's because the other one really is identifying that opportunity and the change. And so when you look at, for example, COVID, digitization, social good brands, you see a lot of examples. In the past couple of years, I think everyone hopefully has become really familiar with the push for ESG metrics and reporting that have, really come upon our world. It really started in the investor space, where they started demanding that their holding companies are providing these ESG reporting metrics. And Blackstone kind of was the pioneer in this space. But really since then, in the last few years, it's impacted every company of substance in every industry, whether even if it's not coming directly because you're a portfolio company in a broader fund, shareholders, stockholders, everybody is demanding this. And we've seen it before in the past. It's been called the triple bottom line. I don't know if you're familiar with people, planet, and profits. Sustainability, same concept, new word. So it's a big macro trend that's been creeping into our world for decades. And, if you ignore it, you're going to be left behind. So there's some companies like Patagonia, Burt's Bees, Tom's Shoes, where they really did a great job of capturing their share of the industry because of this macro trend. There's other brands, however, that have completely missed the mark. And my favorite terrible story is the Abercrombie and Fitch one. I don't know if you've heard this or not, where one of their executives was reported to have said, "We would rather burn clothes than give them to poor people," which it's the best terrible thing I have ever heard a company say. And it was blasted everywhere. And it's been 10 years, 15 years since that came out, and they still haven't recovered for it. People still think of Abercrombie and Fitch as the irresponsible company. Completely utter disregard to this trend and the demands that are coming from, the user community, the buying community, the shareholders, the stakeholders, for doing good in the world with their products. So I love that example because it's so cringy and so terrible. And so while that was an opportunity that destroyed a company, there's other examples where a trend has actually created an opportunity. And that was an example of the business that I had. And it, as a push to re-examine things inside of my own industry was, around that 2000 timeframe. That's when things were really going crazy. The dot-coms, the dot-bombs, the internet digitization was really hitting everything. And I was in an old school industry where you still had drillers out with pencil and paper. And so taking the ability to apply that digitization to a completely dinosaured industry was something that I was able to take advantage of, and helping customers in those Fortune 500 examples really streamline their processes. So, you could take these macro trends, you could make something out of it, you could ignore it, you can let it completely bomb your company like Abercrombie did. But these macro trends really do matter, and they make differences. Any questions or comments or conversation on that before I go to topic 3?
I have a quick question. Is one of the ways that some of the companies that you named did this, like being fair trade certified or something along those lines?
What exactly is the question? Are the companies that I named fair trade certified, or is fair trade certification an example of that macro trend?
Yeah, isn't it an example of something like that?
Okay. That would absolutely be an example of that particular macro trend of this, people wanting to buy from brands that feel that they're doing good for the world. And that's a great example. I threw out ESG, I threw out triple bottom line. That's another example of that. Absolutely. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Joanne, you said sorry to cut you off. You said a triple P, something.
Oh, it used to be called the triple bottom line, probably in like the 2010 period. Like I said, ESG has been around forever. They just called it different things before. Before it was triple bottom line, it was people, planet, profits. So are you looking at, are you child labor, planet? Are you deforestation, right? And profits, but you still got to make some money, right? You got to figure out how to do good and still make a profit.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? Yeah, I was going to say almost every business plan I judged last night, they all had a do good component to it. It's really amazing. It's so on the foremind of, entrepreneurs and investors and businesses and everyone. It really is a big deal. You can't ignore this one, guys. If you're thinking it's a passing trend, I think once BlackRock actually took it and made it a criteria of investment, that was a game changer for that particular macro trend. All right, so topic 3. So how do you, we're going to talk about market assessment, knowing the customer, right? So we look at a lot of different things. And so how do you go about assessing these trends on the market? How do you know which ones are going to stick? Why didn't triple bottom line really stick, but ESG did, for example? And you start by making sure you know and understand your industry. Just like I mentioned what Rachel said about sticking within an industry she knows. You're going to be able to tell if a trend's going to stick or not stick because you've been 10 years in that industry. You have that knowledge and that expertise and that basis to really to have some judgment on it. And so once you identify your niche to explore, whether it's real estate or the environmental industry in my example, you really spend some time digging in and understanding it, and then not relying solely on your personal knowledge, which is a great foundation. But one thing that I've been taught is an excellent discipline, and it's a little bit uncomfortable, and you got to put yourself out there. But for those of you that are students, you will never have an opportunity like this in your life, is requesting informational interviews. I can't say enough for informational interviews. Every time someone requests one of me, I offer them a job, right? And they're not even asking for a job. It's, so as a student, you picking up the phone, sending that LinkedIn message, hey, I'm a student at Cal State Fullerton. I'm really interested in this industry. I see you're an expert in it. Could you spare 15 minutes of your time? You'll always get 45. But, starting out with a small request, having a list of questions, appearing serious and organized and methodical, understanding different people's perspective on the industry, experts, speakers, customers, buyers of services, but people pick up the phone for students. So I really, really encourage you to take advantage of these opportunity to do informational interviews. Ask open-ended questions and find where the opportunity lies. And so, there's templates out there. You can Google them. I'm happy to share some if anyone wants to reach out to me after. But there are templates where you can go through and ask these open-ended questions. And then you're pulling out nuggets and you're able to see really where these opportunities might lie. Don't be shy. Don't underestimate the power of these informational interviews to really refine and nail down your market assessment and know what your customer wants, what problem you're solving. All that comes out of your informational interviews. Any questions on that?
I have a comment. So I should probably, instead of saying I'm an insurance broker, I should just lead with I'm a student on my cold calls.
Oh, definitely. 100%. But you're not a student, Raymond, so I don't know how
student of life.
Yeah, you could say you're an alumni of the Entrepreneur program and doing follow-up research, right? I probably would not start with I'm an insurance salesman. No, you might get a lot of hang-ups. I'm glad you can laugh about that too. Okay, so next topic, because we are moving along, because I do want to give us time for breakouts here too. So this is where, I had the point I was perhaps debating, that I believe that we are risk managers, not risk takers. So in order to manage your risk, you need to understand your risk. So when you're in this feasibility stage and now you've identified your industry or your market of interest, you've conducted interviews, and you have pulled out gems and you've pulled out nuggets and you know where opportunity might lie, then you got to stop and understand what the risks are, really. And again, this is pre-business planning. This is risk at a high level. And, market risk was really considered when we looked at the industry trends. Is this completely changing and will shut down that need for that service? That's a market trend, and that was looked at in the industry section. But when you look at risks associated with distribution, technology, finances, and people, completely different kinds of risk. And so, there's in your feasibility, in this process, you're pulling together a feasibility study, right, which compiles the elements of this industry, opportunity, market size, et cetera. There's going to be a risk section, and there'll be very specific tables and information on assessing distribution risk, technology risk, financial risk, people risk. Technology risk, distribution risk, it goes about how to secure the customer and how to deliver that benefit. So that could be, if it's a completely online type of a business versus something that relies on global shipping. Different kind of answers, but it's all about how you're getting the benefit to the customer. And hopefully no one's in global shipping right now, because that's just a major, gigantic mess. If any of you have been along the beach and seen the dozens and dozens of container ships trying to get on shore. But yeah, the distribution risk is completely different from search engine optimization to throwing something on a container and throwing it on a ship and sailing it across the world. It's completely different, but you got to look at it. What are the risks? How do you mitigate those risks? Technology benefit. Technology risk. What's the benefit versus the feature? So it's very, very tempting to sell features, but when you really look at the benefit, not the feature, then you're able to really assess what the risk is associated with that. If somebody's looking to solve problem X, do they really need your solution to solve it, or is there a low cost, no cost way to solve it? So, really assessing the benefit versus the feature and looking at the risks associated with that is critical in your analysis. Financial sense, does it make financial sense? Will it deliver a profit? Doing good is great, but doing good is not sustainable if it's not delivering a profit, right? Because then you can't keep doing good if you're not delivering a profit. You'll be shutting down. So going through that financial risk and the people risk. Are the right people on the bus? Do they have the appropriate level of commitment? What happens, if a partner leaves? What happens if a competitor responds with more ferocity than you anticipated? How do you mitigate those risks? And having a plan that's organized and knowing that you can mitigate these risks if they come up, then helps you to conclude this is an opportunity that is worth pursuing. If you outline all your risks and you discover that they aren't mitigatable, maybe that's not a business you want to start, because it's leaving you too exposed and you are becoming a risk taker, not a risk manager. So, and it depends on your risk tolerance, but even if you're a really risky person, who wants to throw money into a venture if you can't mitigate the risks as they crop up? You're still throwing your money away. It may be a cheap thrill, but go bungee jumping instead. You'll save a lot more money if you just need a cheap thrill. If you're looking to make money, look at your risks, ensure that they're mitigated and they're mitigatable, and you have a plan for mitigating them if those risks do start to reveal themselves. So, and I'm a table person, I think, in rows and columns. So I personally would make a table for each of these, and I would just, summarize all my the risks and then the mitigation paths for each of these different work streams that I talked about. Any questions? And I'm sorry if you guys can hear my dog barking too. I apologize for that. Any comments or questions on any of that? There's got to be something. Thank everyone for coming. I thought there was great participation in our breakout, and it seems like there was by the report outs. And just keep your ideas going and follow through and execute on them, and you'll have something great in no time. So go ahead, Philip, you could do your part.
Okay, so I just want to again say thank you, Joanne. So I will go ahead and say thank you very much. I appreciate your time and putting together this wonderful presentation for everyone to learn. I think it was a great exercise for us to all think about this further, and to think about our own ideas and to further push entrepreneurship. And so I just wanted to say thank you.